Good evening, friends. This is Phil, and this is my follow-up video on what I'm going to call the Woo Flu, uh, because when I posted my first ever video on YouTube, um, it got canceled pretty quickly. So just a recap of the old video. I'm going to try to post a link to the video that I had to post on Rumble um, down below. So hopefully it works. But just to recap, I did get sick with the Wu flu on October 12th, late. I started experiencing symptoms, cold symptoms, mostly post-nasal drip. And then later that night, it progressed to more symptoms. So I decided to call in sick and got tested the next day. And the next day, it came in positive for the Wu flu. Uh, and I had to quarantine for the next 10 days. Overcame it. Was feeling pretty good after a few days. Still had difficulty regulating my temperature, which was spiking consistently up to 102, 103 for about 7 days. But I got on a very rigid regimen of meds that control over-the-counter meds that control fevers and stuff, and did well. I think the last video, one of the reasons that it got canceled is because I was telling you guys about uh, the remedies, the things that I was doing to make myself feel better. Um, Also, it probably didn't help that I criticized, you know, the GOV and the CDC and all that kind of stuff about not prioritizing any type of guidance for people who get sick with it. And, they had 2 years to prepare, or at least to address people who are getting sick, but the only guidance they were able to post on their websites and news was isolation protocol. Isolation protocol. We'll get into that a little bit later. So yeah, I got sick on the 12th and went back to work on the 27th of October. Um, there's a whole different set of protocols with my work. I might get into that a little bit later. Actually, it's pretty hilarious, so I probably will. But anyways, I'm doing well. The family is doing well. Everybody's happy and healthy. Um, but what I wanted to tell you is what happened with my medical provider when first I got sick and then was recovering. Um, so as soon as I got the test back, well, not as soon as I got the test back, but a few hours after I got the test back, I got a text from my provider offering me to call for a consultation. Consultation had nothing at all to do about symptom management or how to make myself feel better. It had everything to do about isolation and disinfecting areas around the house and all that kind of stuff. Any questions that I had about symptom management and how to treat the Wu flu were basically struck down, and I was told that I would need to set up an appointment over the phone with my doctor to discuss the symptoms and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I was shocked initially because, this is a pretty serious deal. We shut down not the government. Actually, we flipped on the switch for the government and put it into hyperdrive while everything else was shut down. I mean, everything else that the government thought should be shut down was shut down, like small businesses and stuff, while huge corporations, full steam ahead, taking over the clientele of the small businesses, blah, blah, blah. Um, Maybe I'll address that in a separate video. Um, but yeah, I was shocked because there was no guidance at all from the nurse on the phone about symptom management and how to treat the Wu flu. Um, no, all I got was isolation protocol, and disinfection protocol. Not only that, but I was lucky enough to have my provider send me I don't even know what to call it, uh, a good luck kit, a good luck kit composed of disinfectants, shampoos, and all that kind of stuff, so that I bathed and cleaned my area while I was in isolation. Isolation from everybody. Don't touch anybody. Don't talk to anybody. Just sit amongst your germs. Clean them as best you can and hope survive fevers, coughs, phlegm, uh, horrible congestion. Um, you know, uh, just list the symptoms. Go down the list. Uh, I was in shock. You know, phone call ended without any guidance. So anyway, I started myself on a regimen that the same regimen I used when I had the swine flu back in 2009, which was much worse, much worse. That was the only time in my adult life when I had any type of flu that I felt that I needed to go to the ER, otherwise I would have died. Um, so back in 2009, the swine flu, the symptoms were much worse. I felt so much worse than with the wuflu. Um, wuflu, by the way, for those of you who don't know, I'm just referencing Wuhan. Um, Now we all know where Wuhan is. Back in the day, nobody knew where the hell Wuhan was. And I kind of covered this in the first video, how there was several layers of separation from where the Wu flu originated to what it's called now. I'm not even going to go into that. Hopefully, the link, you can see the link and see the first video. Um, so yeah. Anyway, a few days after that phone call, I got a phone call from the county where I live, and this very nice gentleman. Later on, I found out that he has a very long history in sales, so he was very pleasant to talk to. I called up and started asking questions. Like I said, he was very nice, but what it turned out to be was he was like a government tracker to see had the who had the Wu flu and what they were doing about it, who they lived with, all that kind of stuff. I asked a lot of questions about my children. Um, didn't get many answers except for some symptoms that they were experiencing. Uh, but he was very nice, and at the end of the conversation, he asked me if I had any questions for him, and I did ask him what was the government guidance, since he was a government agent, what was the government guidance for treating the Wu flu? He's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, it's funny that there's government guidance about isolation and some guidance for disinfection of living areas, and there's lots of a huge protocol, mandates, guidance for the the jab that people are getting for an experimental, you know, thing that has only been around for, well, now about a year, uh, as of the date of this video, November 2021. But there has never been official guidance from the CDC, any of the NGOs, the non-government organizations that are funded by the government, um, or that fund the government. Huh. One of those. Anyway, and from the government itself, from any of the NGOs, from the WHO, not the band, about how to treat the damn thing. Why? Is there any guy? Is there any guidance? I asked him, and he started stumbling, which was uncharacteristic of this gentleman because he was very smart and, like I said, he had a long history in sales. Um, So he changed the subject immediately, and the phone call ended shortly after that. Um, and I didn't get any answers. Anyway, I survived. My family survived. Went back to work, and a couple of weeks later, um, yeah, I have to get into the work thing. Um, so I declined to get the jab, and I had to file. This was a couple of months back, and I had to file an exemption form, um, and I specified several things, which I'm not going to get into. Anyway, after getting rejected after the first exemption request, um, my appeal was approved. So maybe down the road, if I ever do another video, I will go in much more detail. It is a pretty hilarious story. Um, so it was approved. Uh, Immediately, as soon as I called in sick, I let my supervisor know on the night of the 12th or early morning of the 13th of October. Um, and I was expected to get the test immediately. Got tested positive, submitted the positive test, uh, and uh, the protocol was, you have to isolate for 10 days. If you don't have a fever or any other symptoms, you can return to work, which was the case with me. So I returned to work. But then I spoke with my supervisor and I said that uh, my medical provider told me that there is no reason for me to get tested for the next few months again because I've been sick with it. It was confirmed. I had all the symptoms. I tested positive. So I'm going to continue testing positive for the next few months. However, despite that fact and despite the guidance from my medical provider about not needing to get tested, because I got the exemption from my employer, I was still required to get tested every week uh, after getting the exemption and after testing positive already. So my employer said that even though we know that you're going to keep testing positive for the wuflu, we still require that you get tested weekly. So, I asked, well, what's the point of that? Isn't that just a waste of time? Because obviously, I'm not going to be doing this on my own time. I'm going to be clocked in while I go get tested, several miles away from work. Um, didn't get any type of reasonable response. I just was told that, well, that's protocol and I have to follow it, which is fine. That's fine. I'll get paid for doing nothing. That's okay. Uh, so the the really funny part comes when I go get tested. I actually got tested uh, yesterday. So today is November 4th. I got tested on November 3rd in the morning while I was at work. I took a quick break, didn't clock out, obviously, and drove to the testing site, the closest one for my major medical provider, and got tested and got the results this morning. And I was fully expecting, the obvious that I would be tested positive again since I just had it. Um, Shockingly, the test came back negative. Negative. So immediately my mind started just churning. I'm like, wow, that is just crazy. What is going on here? I'm getting told by medical professionals that I'm going to continue testing positive for the next few months. So I send the test to my supervisor, and so now they're put in a position where they have to figure out what to do if I test positive next week, which is quite positive or possible. Sorry. Um, what are they going to do? This could have been a false negative, but what is The most interesting possibility is, what if it was a false positive and I just had the regular flu or the seasonal flu instead of the Wu flu? Which begs the question, what if the Wu flu is just seasonal flu? Do you remember last year when the Wu flu was rampant, and then these reports started coming out, which were later quashed, and everybody forgot about them, stopped talking about them, that the Wu flu acts as a barrier to the seasonal flu. I was very interested in this last year, and I kept asking myself, well, wait, that makes sense if the Wu flu is the seasonal flu, and the seasonal flu keeps evolving. So who knows? Who knows? But then imagine this. Just take a break, okay, and just imagine a world. Pretend that you're completely ignorant of everything that's been going on. You don't know what the Wu flu is, uh, and imagine a world where you do not know how to treat flu symptoms, right? And you are told by the government that there's this horrible disease, much, much more horrible than the regular cold, that you have to isolate for weeks by yourself, and you cannot have contact with anybody. And we're not going to tell you how to treat it because we don't know. It's this new horrible disease, much worse than the cold. You got to figure it out by yourself. Isolate. We'll tell you how to disinfect. How many people do you think would believe that and trust their government and isolate and not do anything about their symptoms and just try to wait it out? I, I don't know. I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe 30%, 20%. But whatever it is, if you're not treating the symptoms, it'll progress, it'll get worse and worse and worse, even with, the regular flu or the cold, and then you'll have to get hospitalized. And then your chances of having serious complications increase exponentially, especially if you get on the ventilator. But that's a whole different story. I'm not get into that because this will probably get canceled. It'll probably get canceled anyway, so I'll have to post it on Rumble again. But bear with me. Um, what do you think of that? Can you imagine that world? Well, it appears that we are living it. Um, so briefly, I'll go into how I survived. Well, I survived by treating the Wu flu like the regular flu, and it worked. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. Um, since the GOV is not providing any guidance on how to treat it, look it up anywhere. Google it, use any search engine, whatever, and see if there's any guidance from the government of how to treat this thing. You're not going to find it. Uh, However, there's these pharmaceutical companies that are now getting approval for these viral medicines. It has nothing to do with the over-the-counter medications, or the not popular, super cheap medications to treat symptoms. Very interesting, very interesting. A whole other video, probably, maybe, if I decide to do it. Um, so yeah, tell me what you think. Let me know if you want me to go into detail about any of the things that I covered in this video, and I hope you're having a good night and staying safe and healthy.